What's up everybody, my name is Astro and welcome to the first video in a series I'm creating on Splatoon weapon analysis. Now what I plan to do for this series is first I'm going to start by taking the weapon and discussing the weapon's typing and stats. Then I'm going to talk about the weapon's version history to see the various nerfs and buffs that the weapon received through all the patches. And then finally I'm going to recommend some gear builds that you can use with the weapon. And I tried to design these builds in such a way that it plays to the weapon's strengths as well as try to cover its weaknesses. So, as you can see in the image, today's video is going to be all about the Tentatek Splattershot. So let's get started. So to start things off, the Tentatek Splattershot, which I'll just refer to as just the Tentatek, is a main shooter type weapon in Splatoon. It can be purchased from the Ammo Night store for a value of 2,000 coins once you have reached level 4. And the Tentatek also has a reskin version called the Octoshot Replica. It shares the same stats as the Tentatek, and it can be obtained from Judd after you have reached level 40. But as for the stats in question, the Tentatek has a range of 50, damage of 45, and a fire rate of 55. Meaning that overall the Tentatek has general average stats and is a mid-range type of weapon. As for its base damage, which is the damage that it's used to calculate how many hits it will take to eliminate your opponent, the Tentatek has a base damage of 35, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that once I reach the version history. As for its sub-weapon, the Tentatek gets the Suction Bomb for its sub-weapon, which is a really good sub-weapon, perhaps one of the best in the game in my opinion. It can be used to cling to walls and ceilings, and in that sense, it can be used to set up some fancy traps for your opponents, which is really cool. As for its special weapon, the Tentatek gets the Inkzuka, which again in my opinion is perhaps one of the best specials in the game. It has the second longest range in the game, only being beat out by the Eagle Eater Charger series. And its main purpose is to basically take out enemies that are outside of your maximum range. So overall, the Tentatek is a mid-range type of weapon that can fill a variety of roles. It can be used both offensively and defensively, and it shares great synergy with the Suction Bomb and the Inkzuka, allowing you to effectively take out your foes both from close range and from a distance. As for its version history, the Tentatek has received a couple of significant nerfs. So in version 2.2 of the game, the base damage of the weapon was decreased from 36 to 35. Now you may think that's not that big of a deal. However, when the base damage was at 36, you were guaranteed to eliminate your opponents with 3 hits, regardless of whether or not they were using defense up. But now with the base damage changed to 35, if your opponent happens to be using 1 main of defense up or more, it will then change that 3-hit splat into a 4-hit splat. So now your opponent will have the opportunity to take you out before you can take them out. So one way to mitigate this loss is to just now run a little bit of damage up, and it'll bring you back to that initial 3-hit kill status. Also, besides dealing with defense up users, damage up is also useful for what's known as fall-off damage. So for those of you that don't know, when your ink pellet reaches its maximum range, it tends to lose a little bit of power. So by using a little bit of damage up, it will bring that power back to its normal value. So you can use your weapon at any range, knowing that your power value will always be the same. So in version 2.7 of the game, Splatoon introduced what's known as Special Depletion. So initially, regardless of whatever weapon you were using, in the event that you got splatted, you would always lose half of your special meter, or 50%. But now with the introduction of Special Depletion, all the weapons fall into either one of 3 categories, either light, medium, or heavy. So in the case of the Tentatek, it falls under the heavy category, which means that now whenever you get splatted, you lose up to 75% of your special meter, which is a significant loss. So now you can just run some special saver in order to save as much special meter as possible. And also with the Tentatek, as well as just weapons that fall under the heavy depletion category, you now have to pretty much know how to use these weapons properly. And I'm talking about this from a solo rank queue and competitive standpoint. In Turf War, it doesn't really matter. You can pretty much do whatever the heck you want. However, from a competitive point of view, you now have to know what it is that you're doing. And you also have to survive long enough to have your special charge so that you can use it when it counts. So the days of pretty much acting like Leroy Jenkins, going on a suicidal rampage and getting 10 kills and 20 deaths, those days are pretty much over now. I mean, it's nice that you're able to get 10 kills in a short amount of time. However, with those 20 deaths, you're not charging your special, which is quite unfortunate. So that's just something to keep in mind when using a Tentatek, as well as heavy depletion weapons in general. As for the Inkzuka, it got a couple of nerfs as well, and it also gained a pretty good buff. So in version 2.0, it increased the amount of turf needed to be inked for filling the special gauge from 180 points to 220 points, making the Inkzuka one of the more expensive specials to charge. So if you wanted to run special charge up to cut that time down, you could totally do that. And in version 2.2, it increased the amount of time required to fire off the first shot after activating your Inkzuka from 0.55 seconds to 0.92 seconds. So initially, when it was at 0.55 seconds, you could use the Inkzuka in close proximity to your opponent, pretty much firing off the first shot almost instantaneously, which was kind of funny, but still a little bit broken. So the change from 0.92 seconds means that you have to be more aware of how and where you activate your Inkzuka. So personally, what I like to do is just hide behind a wall or a crate, activate my Inkzuka, pop out, and then take my first shot. You still get the 6 shots required, but the first shot just takes a little bit longer to fire off. So you just have to be a little bit more aware of where you activate it. So in version 2.6, they increased the maximum possible duration of the Inkzuka, with special duration up from 40% to 60%. So that means if you're running special duration up, you can fire off an extra shot or two with the Inkzuka, which is really cool. So overall, as far as gear and abilities are concerned, I consider the Tentatek to be fairly gear independent, meaning that you could pretty much run whatever you want with it and it'll work just fine. However, if you are having some trouble trying to figure out the best abilities to use with the Tentatek, I've designed a few gear builds that could fill a variety of roles for the weapon. So let's take a look at the first gear build that I have for you in this video. So this first build is what I consider to be an all-around general purpose build for the Tentatek to make use of. So we're going to start things off by assembling our headgear. We can use either one of two options, the 2-stripe mesh or the stealth goggles. The 2-stripe mesh uses Special Saber for its main ability, and it features the Crack-On brand, which has a high chance of rolling swim speed up for its sub-abilities. As for the stealth goggles, it uses swim speed up for its main ability, but it has the Forge brand, which has a high chance of rolling special duration up. Now your headgear will determine how you plan to use the Inkzuka. If you want to try and save as much special meter as possible when you get splatted, then the 2-stripe mesh is a good choice to go with. However, if you are confident in your ability to survive, then the stealth goggles is also another excellent option to use, as the special duration up subs will help you fire off an extra shot with your Inkzuka. As for the clothes, I came up with either one of 3 options: the navy striped LS, the part-time pirate, or the varsity jacket. All 3 of these use damage up for its main ability, which is used to counter those defense up users as well as help with fall off damage. However, the navy striped LS has the Splash Mob brand, which has a high chance of rolling Ink Saver main. The part-time pirate has the Tentatek brand, which has a high chance of rolling Ink Recovery up, and the varsity jacket has the Zeko brand, which has a high chance of rolling Special Saver. Now you might think I'm crazy for suggesting ink efficiency perks on a weapon that's already ink efficient to begin with, and I would agree with you. The Tentatek is a fairly ink efficient weapon even after throwing a suction bomb. The suction bomb uses 70% of your ink tank, so that means you have 30% left over to continue firing your weapon. However, personally I found from time to time in critical situations I tend to run out of ink after throwing a couple of suction bombs, which is why I recommended ink efficiency perks with the Navy Stripes LS and the Part-Time Pirate. However, if you are comfortable with the gun's ink efficiency, you can then easily go with the Varsity Jacket, and combining that with the 2-stripe mesh will help you save a lot of special meter when you get splatted. Then finally, to round off this set, we're going to be using the Blue Moto Boots for our shoes. The Blue Moto Boots has ink resistance up for its main ability, and since this build is fairly aggressive, you will find yourself constantly running into enemy ink, so the ink resistance up is a good way to combat that. And the boots uses the Rockenberg brand, which has a high chance of rolling run speed up. So overall, this is a great general purpose build to use with the Tentatek. You get good movement options in the form of swim speed up and run speed up as a way to both swim strafe and run strafe your opponent. You have damage up to counter those defense up users, as well as help with fall off damage, ensuring that the Tentatek is always splatting in 3 hits. And you also get good ink efficiency perks if you would like to use them, as well as Special Saver perks to make sure that your Inkzooka is fairly charged at all times. So I've used all of these gears and they work really well in combination in my opinion. So you can just mix and match and figure out which combination works the best for your playstyle. Up next, I have one of 2 stealth builds for the Tentatek to use, and this first build will use stealth in the form of Ninja Squid. So we're going to start things off by putting together our headgear in the form of either the 2-stripe mesh or the stealth goggles as in the previous build. So once again, this will determine how you plan to use your Inkzooka, whether you want to save as much special meter as possible using the 2-stripe mesh, or firing off a couple of extra shots with your Inkzooka using the stealth goggles. However, if you're having trouble with ink efficiency, then the camo mesh is another good option to use. It has swim speed up for its main ability, and it features the Firefin brand, which has a high chance of rolling Ink Saver sub as a way to manage ink after throwing a suction bomb. As for our clothes, we're going to be using the White Anchor T to achieve our stealth status. It has Ninja Squid for its main ability, and it features the Squid Force brand, which has a high chance of rolling damage up as a way to counter those defense up users, as well as help with fall off damage. And finally, to round off this build, we're going to be using the red high tops for our shoes. It has ink resistance up for its main ability as a way to keep us mobile while walking through enemy ink, and it features the Crack-On brand, which has a high chance of rolling swim speed up. So overall, this build will help the Tentatek play the role of the assassin. So with Ninja Squid, the ripples that you leave behind while swimming are now invisible to your enemies, which makes you harder to track. So unless your enemy has very good tracking skills, usually about 9 times out of 10, they will tend to fire in the last position you are standing at. So you can use that to your advantage to gain the upper hand on your enemies. However, Ninja Squid does have a few crippling weaknesses that you need to be aware of. So first off, when you use this ability, your swim speed will be decreased by 10%, which is why I stacked a lot of swim speed on the headgear and the shoes to cover this loss. Also, when you're swimming up on vertical walls, the ripples that you leave behind are now visible to your enemies, so you'll be a lot easier to track. And finally, this ability is hard countered by tracking sub-weapons, special weapons, and abilities such as the Point Sensor, Echolocator, and Haunt, respectively. So, I've designed an alternate stealth build to give you more coverage against those tracking weapons and abilities. So let's take a look at that alternate build right now. So this alternate stealth build will be using stealth in the form of cold-blooded. So we're going to start things off by putting together our headgear by using a new gear that was introduced in version 2.8 called the Koro Koro Cap. It has damage up for its main ability, and it features the Zekko brand, which has a high chance of rolling special saver. As for our clothes, we could use either one of three options, either the Koro Koro hoodie, which is another new gear that was introduced in version 2.8, the Sage Polo, or the Sky Blue Squid Eye. All three of these use cold-blooded for its main ability as a way to give us coverage against those tracking weapons and abilities such as the echolocator, point sensors, and haunt. However, the Koro Koro hoodie features the Zekko brand, which is a high chance of rolling special saver. The Sage Polo features the Splash Mob brand, which is a high chance of rolling Ink Saver main, and the Sky Blue Squid Eye features the Tentatek brand, which is a high chance of rolling Ink Recovery up. And once again, this will all depend on your playstyle, so if you're comfortable with the ink efficiency, you can then easily use the Koro Koro hoodie, and putting that in combination with the Koro Koro cap will allow you to save a lot of special meter in the event that you get splatted. However, if ink efficiency is a problem for you, then the Sage Polo or the Sky Blue Squid Eye are two very good options to use. And then finally, to round off this build, we're going to be using either the white kicks or the oyster clogs for our shoes. The white kicks has swim speed up for its main ability, and it features the Rockenberg brand, which has a high chance of rolling run speed up. And the oyster clogs uses run speed up for its main ability, and it features the Krakon brand, which has a high chance of rolling swim speed up. And having both movement abilities in one piece of gear is very convenient and very cool. And one thing to keep in mind when using this build, there is no ink resistance, so you have to be more aware of your positioning and movement when you're near enemy ink. So overall, I think this is a very good stealth build for the Tentatek to use, as it gives you more coverage against those echolocators and point sensor users, since those weapons and abilities are more commonplace in the matches that you run into. So I would recommend using this build in a more competitive and ranked setting, whereas the previous stealth build that I showed you would be more suited for something like Turf War. And finally, I have a quick respawn build for the Tentatek to make use of. So we're going to start things off by putting together our headgear in the form of the backwards cap. The backwards cap uses quick respawn for its main ability, and it features the Zekko brand, which is a high chance of rolling special saver. As for our clothes, we're going to be using the basic tee, which also uses quick respawn for its main ability. However, it features the Squid Force brand, which has a high chance of rolling damage up. And then finally, to round off this build, we're going to be using either one of three options for our shoes: the cream high tops, the choco clogs, or the red high tops. All three of these shoes feature the Krakon brand, which has a high chance of rolling swim speed up. However, the cream high tops uses stealth jump for its main ability, the choco clogs uses quick respawn for its main ability, and the red high tops uses ink resistance up for its main ability. And your shoes will pretty much determine what mode you plan to use the Tentatek in. So personally, I find stealth jump to be useful in modes such as splat zones and tower control, as a way for you to jump in and potentially surprise your opponents, since your super jump ring is no longer visible on the floor. However, you do have to keep in mind that stealth jump does have a couple of nerfs. So first off, your super jump speed will be a little bit slower, and now you have to completely land on the ground before you can launch your attack. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind when using that ability. However, if you just want to go with the full quick respawn package, then the Choco Clogs is an excellent option to use, as it gives you those three mains of quick respawn as a way to get back into the fray as quickly as possible. However, if you do plan to use the Choco Clogs or the Cream High Tops, you do have to be aware of your positioning and movement when you're near enemy ink, since you're not using any ink resistance. So if that is a concern for you, then the red high tops is a great option to use, as that ink resistance up will keep you mobile while walking through enemy ink. So overall, this is a great quick respawn build for the Tentatek to use. It gives you good movement perks in the form of swim speed up to help you reposition as well as swim straight for your opponents. It gives you damage up to counter those defense up users as well as help with fall off damage. You also have Special Saver as a way to save meter in the event that you get splutted, and you have good main abilities in your shoes depending on which mode you are playing in. But anyways guys, that's all I have for you in this video, so I'd like to thank you all for watching my debut analysis on the Tentatek Splattershot. I hope you found all of this information useful. If you have any of the builds that I've shared with you in this video, I would encourage you to give it a try to see how they work out for you. And also, I'd like to hear from you guys. What are some of your favorite gear and abilities to use with the Tentatek Splattershot? Be sure to sound off your personal builds in the comments below. But as I stated before, that's all I have in this video. This is Astro blasting off, and until next time, take care, stay fresh, and I hope you all have a great day.